being here tonight. Tonight, I get to speak to somebody who had me on their podcast, who I highly respect. Very knowledgeable dude. He talks to all sorts of people all over the globe. So tonight, I get to feature Joe from Beyond the Woodline. And last time I got to see Joe was last week, and Joe was talking to a really, really cool dude. And I was like, I gotta have Joe come on. We gotta have some pretty cool discussions. I remember when I got to sit with Joe in about 4 years ago now. We got to talk about some really cool stuff. So it's an honor and a privilege to have you on here tonight, Joe, with us. So tell us a little bit about yourselves and your background and your show and your podcast because it's big. I mean, you got a big podcast show. You got a lot of people you talk to in networks, sir.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about my show is that I try to talk to people from all over, from different walks of life, and
Mhm.
try to get different perspectives, different viewpoints, and um, so it's called Beyond the Woodline. And the reason why I picked that title is because I'm originally a Bigfoot researcher,
Nice.
and I got into kind of a spiritual life for a
Mhm.
while, and it all happened accidental. And
Yeah.
so that's where I got Beyond the Woodline because there's more out there beyond the woodline, and um, yeah, I try to talk to people from everything from tarot card readers to
Yeah.
psychic mediums to remote
Yeah.
viewers. I've had
Mhm.
people talk about crystals and
Mhm.
just all kinds of different stuff, and of course, the Bigfoot field, the different
Yeah.
cryptids, the paranormal,
Yeah.
UFOs and aliens. I try to get as much knowledge as I can, and even if I don't always understand it, at least I'm putting it out there.
And there's a seed though that's planted because I'm sure some of the things that you've heard about have come up again over and over. And Bigfoot has been my thing since I was a kid, and I totally understand and know that I it's an interdimensional being, and I totally know that they're here and they're not, and they're here and they're not, and so that's always been very fascinating and very spiritual to me as well. And um I what is your experience? I mean, speaking with a lot of different psychics in the paranormal and Bigfoot, what is your experience in that sense with portals and Bigfoot? Do you believe that they're here? Or you think that they're, an interdimensional party or being when it comes to those things?
I really really don't know.
Okay.
Because I've heard so many different experiences and encounters, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even down to our Native Americans here in the
Yeah.
United States, and
Yeah.
not all of them saw him as a peaceful being, and
Being
I
right.
mean, there are different names from them. Some of
Yes.
them have devils and cannibals and evil gods, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you got to take all that into consideration, and
Yeah.
you know, and like what I tell everyone too is like until we can actually have one in front of us, we can't, make a
Yeah.
final decision on that. But
Yeah.
it's like I said, though, for me, um, everything. If you had told me that 5 years ago that I would be have my own tarot cards or my own crystals, I
Mm-hmm.
would have told you were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you were crazy. If you told
Mm-hmm.
me I would be meditating and trying to all this other
Mm-hmm.
different stuff, I would have told you there's no way. You know, but
Yeah. So how has that journey played out for you? I know when I got to speak to you a while ago, the very first thing that came up is like you had this outer body experience and then everything shifted for you. How did you start to get into that, especially?
I was searching for answers more or less, and I
Okay.
was trying to find my way in life. And I am a Christian, a Catholic, but I
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
but and this was all my own personal journey, right? I
Yeah.
kind of I
Yeah.
kind of felt that had let me down,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I just felt that there
You're
was
no different than a lot of us, Joe.
yeah, um,
Yeah.
but like I said, I'm still very Catholic in my roots, I really
Yes.
am.
Yeah.
But I like I
Yeah.
said, I felt that it had let me down, and I was looking for answers, and so
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I started to meditate. You
Hmm.
know, of
Yeah.
course it's a little bit different than praying, right?
Yeah.
And at first I started seeing just these shapes and these colors,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I thought that was just all in here, right? But then
Yeah.
eventually I started seeing images, and I started seeing, and it's crazy even today to talk about it out loud. I started
Yeah.
seeing a being in the corner of my room. He was a big
Yeah.
guy, and
Big
I
guy. Yeah.
still don't know who he is or what he wanted, but he was there in the room, and it was like I felt this energy, like if you're standing in a river, and we've all stood in a river at one time or another, you can feel the
Yeah.
water going around
Water
you.
rushing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what it was like. That's what that energy was like, and it was just the weirdest
Mhm.
thing. And
Yeah.
so I started doing it more and more, and started really focusing. And I think I told you I had this out
Mhm.
of body experience where I was like above the earth, like not just like
Yeah.
above the ground, but like in the atmosphere, like above the
Mhm.
atmosphere, and that freaked me
Mhm.
out. And I came back instantly, and
Did the outer body experience freak you out more than the being in your
oh
room,
yeah,
or did the being scare you more?
no, the outer body experience scared me more. You know,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that scared
For
me
me,
so
I
much.
would have been the polar opposite, just the things that I've seen and occurred. I would have been like, okay, I'm totally cool with flying outside of my body. This being in front of my face, I got to figure out where are you coming from? Who are you connected to? That's my spiritual PTSD. I believe that sometimes the spiritual journey gives us all little PTSD in one way or another. For you,
Right.
the outer body, oh, geez, I don't want to do that again. For me, it's seeing some really nasty, gruesome things, in that dimensional way. So that's really cool that you had that both of those experiences, and you're like, I'm totally cool with seeing. I'm good. I'm good with the being in my room, but the outer body, I'm not so sure of. So have you had another outer body since then, or no?
One, but it was very short lived again because it freaked me out,
Mhm.
and I just stayed in my room this time,
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
was uh, and I saw myself laying in bed,
In
you
bed.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that freaked me out,
Yeah.
and I was afraid I couldn't get back in my
Back
body,
in.
and that's what
Yeah.
freaked me out. That's what freaked me out. It wasn't that I had an out of
Mhm.
body experience. I was like, am I gonna be able to get back into that thing?
Back in.
Yeah, yeah.
That's real. I mean, I heard you talking to the gentleman that I got to see a week and a half ago or so on your show, and you guys had pinpointed on that very quickly, and it was about sleep paralysis, and that position of, in a sense, getting stuck. And I know that other people in this room have experienced sleep paralysis. Do you think that that's you trying to come back into your body, and what do you have experience wise with portals? Have you seen any of those things? Are you prone to seeing energy portals, or feeling them, or having more continued connection with the being in your room?
So as far as portals goes, I've never seen a portal, but I felt it
Okay.
around me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
so in the house that in my first marriage, in the house that I lived in, uh,
Mhm.
I mean, me and my family, my ex-wife,
Mhm.
and my three kids, we
Mhm.
all felt that portal, and we knew that there
Yeah.
was stuff coming in and out. It was, and that was like extremely crazy because, so I don't know what people think about orbs, right? But
Yeah.
we literally saw
See them. Yeah.
hundreds of
It's of them.
orbs. I mean hundreds.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
nothing I've ever seen before, and it was
Yeah.
always in one room was the focal point. So
Okay.
yeah, so I don't know what that
Mm.
was about. I didn't stay in that house
Yeah.
very long. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, I've had experiences, unfortunately, with many of those things, and what you're saying is very familiar to me. Ghost hunting, seeing those things. A lot of times, my understanding, my background, just to give you a little bit, is usually there will be quote unquote portals opened up when specific events or traumatic things have happened in that particular room. So let's say somebody was harboring a lot of emotion, or had a lot of depression, or carried a lot of trauma, and that was their room. That, honestly, that harboring of that energy is a conduit, and will focus in on one particular room that has a portal open, that easy access come in and out of. A lot of the times, closets, mirrors,
Yeah.
you can feel them too. And my understanding, and maybe you have some to add to this, obviously water is a conduit and water is life force energy. We have the ability to make up the H, which is hydrogen, okay, and we have the ability to make up O, which is oxygen. And we as humans, we can make hydrogen, we have oxygen, we can make oxygen, but we can't make the two. The two is God, the two is the Christ, the two is God, because we can't make the two. So H2O is water, which is the most physical conduit we have of life force energy. And so maybe you've even heard this before, that we feel like a lot of spirits in and out of the bathrooms and mirrors because of that water being a conduit. And where there's a lot of water, there's a lot of energy, because they can use that to manipulate and energize themselves to show up in colors and jump in and out of these portals. And you had mentioned something about time jumping, and sometimes to me it seems like those portals are like these little wormholes that the spirits or the unseen kind of goes through too,
Right.
from that way. And when you're speaking about that heightened activity in certain houses and places, yeah, there's certain houses that have specific activities in them because there's somebody that harbors a lot of energy in that room. So I'm sure a lot of people have had experiences like that with the portals, and that it's scary.
You know
It's not
what?
always
I'm
friendly.
going to tell you right now, you just said something that I never thought about, and that was the mirror
What?
thing. We had a
Yeah.
big mirror in that room, and it was probably like 6 by
Yep.
6. It took up almost the whole
Yeah.
wall, and I never thought about that until right now. Until right now,
Whew, dude.
that was the same
Mirrors,
exact room. Yeah,
Joe, if I could give you my experience with mirrors, I would understand why they're used as dimensional access points. Not only are they very back in far history used in certain dynamics of scrying and seeing and witchcraft, and we have the metaphors of, oh, don't break a mirror, bad luck for 7 years. And the mirrors do allow others to access and astral travel. And my experience with mirrors, they're not all bad, um but there are many mirrors that I'm sure have energy that has opened. There was one in my house, and it was one of those old time full body mirrors, and it was, we couldn't understand why there was so much activity and so much going on, and that was like when I was like 23, 24, and then it made complete sense. So mirrors are something that we kind of anoint and bless. And you being very faithful in that space, it might be something that you think of as you're moving into this next place of anointing and blessing
yeah,
those mirrors and those conduit spaces, because we're light, dude, and you know that, and we're energy, man, and we're spirit, and we're more than what this place makes us out to be. And so a lot of times we attract that energy as we rise too. And
yeah.
have you had more experiences in this, since then, with any type of portals? Have you heard of anything from other people too?
So I actually have a video, and I need to send it to you. A friend of
Yeah,
mine was
please.
out doing his Bigfoot thing, and he had a dash cam on his, and he's going down
Yeah.
this road, and there's this. It looks like an orb, right? But it actually
Mhm.
looks more like a portal when you look at it, and it's
Get it?
maybe the
Yeah.
size of a basketball. And he
Oh, wow,
passes
yeah.
it on the road, and he's like, I thought I was going to hit it, and he had to move to the
Wow.
side. And he said I was
Side.
expecting to feel it, but he
Wow,
didn't.
yeah.
But it scared
Wow.
him so much that he actually pulled over and had to say the Lord's Prayer.
Oh,
Uh, but I got
I
that
probably would have
video,
said a
and
couple other
yeah,
things too, yeah.
I've got that
That'd
video,
be
and I,
some
and, and I need to send it to you so you can check it out. It's
I would
really
love to
cool. I
check it
mean,
out.
it's one of the craziest thing that I've ever seen.
And have you seen, just even in the last couple years of your own experiences with the energies heightening up and stuff like that, have you had a lot more spiritual experiences yourself like that? How long has it been since you Bigfoot hunted, man?
It's actually been about a year because I had a lot going on in my personal
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, yeah.
Moving,
Yeah. Yeah.
kids, and the family. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we we've had some strange things happen to us in, going out in the Bigfoot world. And um
Hmm.
I think there's a lot more, and I don't know what you want to call it, spiritual or paranormal
Yeah.
stuff that goes
Yeah.
on in the forest than what people think. I think they lump all that in with Bigfoot,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there's some strange things that happens in the forest, and I think, and again, I'm one of these people that if you had told me 5 years ago that fairies
Hmm.
exist, that elementals
It's it.
exist, I would have told you were crazy.
Right.
But I
Until you
don't
seen it for
anymore. I,
yourself.
I, I think there's a lot
No.
that exists in this world, and that
It's very intertwined and
yeah.
interdimensional, man. It really is all the activity that we have in many different places. What is your experience with fairies and stuff? How did you come into that awareness for yourself?
I have a friend of mine that lives in Canada, and would talk about, because she was from the UFO field, but she would talk
Yeah.
about seeing fairies. And
Hmm.
again, I thought she was crazy, and I seen these little beings, you
Hmm.
know, one day,
Hmm.
and I was like, these got to be lightning bugs, fireflies,
I'm
whatever,
I'm a believer.
you know. But they were
Hmm.
like the size of, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 inches tall.
Yeah.
And I was just
Hmm.
like, this isn't a lightning bug,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're like the only one I've ever told this. So anyone listening to this is the first time you've ever heard this story. But yeah, I
That's so cool.
I mean, they had to have been
They are.
fairies, the way they were moving and the way they were uh flying around, I guess you could say, because they
Yeah.
weren't, and
They're not normal. They
no,
don't fly normal like any normal bug or any creature
yeah.
in a sense that
Yeah,
you've seen. They don't.
it's very quick, very rapid,
Hmm.
fast moving, stopping on a dime.
Very fast.
And there was like,
Yeah.
yeah, there was like three of them flying around the campsite.
They
And like
remind me of the interdimensional beings that come in and out of here. They fly on a dime,
yeah,
they stop, go. Yeah.
yeah,
The campsite. There were
yeah,
three of them at the campsite.
yeah, yeah. They were there at the campsite. I mean, within anywhere from 10 feet to 20 feet, of the campsite, and I felt like they were playing or toying with us. And
Mm.
well, we all
Oh, yeah.
yeah, there was three of us total there, and that's what we
Hmm.
all felt like we were being toyed with.
Oh, yeah, you were.
And you know what?
110%.
They almost moved like bats. That's how they almost moved. A little bit smoother.
Yes.
You know,
Smoother. Yep.
yeah, yeah,
I've had a few encounters of my own growing up in that realm. They're very interesting, and I, being stupid and young, one of my young and stupid stories that people like to hear, because we all get to learn from them, is I started coaxing them in. You could
okay,
say, baiting them in fairy garden, leaving honey, leaving. They love little trinkety things, little charms, silver. They love trinkety things. I swear I've lost half of my jewelry to them.
yeah,
110%. They love like little earring backs that are silver, little tiny earring. They love keys. Keys is one of their favorite. If you have little keys that go to journals or diaries,
yeah,
okay? They love those little trinkety things. And I would barter, and they would do we would trade. I would leave them little fairy gifts, and they would do fun little abundancy things for me. Like sometimes I was struggling in the garden and I needed more of this herb to grow, and then the next day it was like something completely different. So elementals and those things truly exist. I'm all about it, and they're all over the place. There's a lot that I would, in my knowing now, I would choose not to work with, but they really do play a lot of tricks. I used to think it was socks, but it's really a lot of trinkety things.
hmm
Yeah, they're real. They're real. I wouldn't suggest it, because they're fun to play with, but personally, doing those things are not necessarily always good to do. You just don't
Yeah.
know what they're looking for, their requirements, their stipulations. Now there's some people that are very well adversed in the fairy realm,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
know a lot about those things. Me, I was young, and I was it's one of those things, like one of those superstitions where you just kind of go to the mirror and see if you can, say things in the mirror, and see if those things come up
Right.
or
Yeah.
happen, and
Right.
so I was young and stupid, and then I, didn't know what I was getting myself into, and they're real. And the elemental beings, the forest comes alive, man, at night, in between skinwalkers and shapeshifters and elemental beings and light orbs and interdimensionals and interstellars. And it's funny because what's beautiful is that people are really recognizing this stuff now, and this is stuff that we've seen for a long time, but for finally people to really be acknowledging it and really talking about it, in many open places,
You
is what's
know,
really
and
cool.
and that kind of goes back to why I do the show, because like I'll have people on the show that even if I don't not necessarily believe what they're saying, I'm not
Yeah,
closed minded enough to say
no.
you're a liar or you're crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Well, not
Because like I
after your
said,
experiences with Bigfoot.
yeah, well, like it's like I said, 5 6 years ago, there's so much that I believe now and know now that I
Mhm.
wouldn't have thought about.
Yeah,
That I would have
yeah,
said
that's
you know,
yeah, it's
yeah,
mind blowing the way
yeah.
that the way that it comes up. And when in your experiences, have you ever done any type of ghost hunting, or I know you've talked to a lot of ghost hunters. What have been some of the coolest ghost hunting stories you've heard about personally?
Well, so so I was never like a big believer like in spirit boxes. You
Yeah,
know, because
yeah,
you don't know what you're picking up, right? And I
yeah,
just thought that people are just picking up noise or random voices or whatever,
yeah,
radio signals.
yeah,
And I went on a ghost hunt, and this guy had a
yeah.
spirit box that he had built and put together, and he was showing it to me, and he said, "I'm fixing to go upstairs. I'm gonna do a session." And I said,
Hmm.
"Can I go with you?" And a voice through that box had come up. Yeah,
You probably pooped yourself, bro.
yeah. It was so cool. It was one of the coolest experiences ever. Yeah, yeah.
Did you get more EVP and more through the spirit box? Did you get more communication after that when you sat in that room?
So we went to this room together as a group. There was like 5 or 6 of us, and we didn't get anything together. But when they left, I stayed in that room, and there was a little toy that was sitting on the chair, and I was
Hmm.
talking to it because it belonged to this little boy. That room belonged to a little boy named Toby, and I
Okay.
was talking to Toby, trying to get him to mess with the toy. Well, we all were. And when
Hmm.
everyone left, I stayed behind, and that toy started going off. Started
That
started
is
playing it.
awesome.
Yeah,
He wanted you to come up. It's almost as if like you got invited by him with him saying come up, and then he was waiting and he didn't want anybody else around but you, and then finally he started making those things occur with you there
yeah,
personally. So that's cool. It's almost like he was like, "No, I don't want anybody else but Joe."
yeah, 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 and yeah, that's what it felt like. Like he was like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to interact with Joe. I'm gonna wait till
Mhm.
everybody leaves, and me and Joe will interact together. Yeah, that was
That's
pretty.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What has been your other, like, in speaking about prophetics and seers and stuff like that? What has been your coolest story or your awareness with oracles and seers and prophetics? What's your experience with that, and how do you kind of pinpoint
So
that in your own experience?
so here's something that I want you to think about. Think about and ask and answer my own question, right? Or answer your
Okay,
question. It's kind of
I'll
like
do it.
okay.
Nah, I'll do it.
So my mom a few years back, we had a party for her. This was like three
Okay,
years ago,
okay,
and we were at her house, and we had like a mariachi band come and play.
yeah,
This was on a Sunday. On that
mhm,
Monday, my brother and my uncle, which was my dad's twin brother, and my aunt
okay,
and my niece were going to
mhm,
go to the cemetery to go and visit my dad's
okay,
grave. My dad at this time he passed away in 2012.
okay,
So this is, I don't know, 7 years after he had passed. So
Okay.
we had this party, and
Hmm.
after like I said, my brother and my uncle, my aunt and my niece were all going to go to the cemetery.
Yeah.
Um, so on that Tuesday, I called my brother. I said, "Hey, how did the trip go?" And he's like, "We wound up not going because it rained and it gets muddy back where where Dad's
Yeah.
buried." I said, "Okay." And my brother says, "But I want to tell you something that's strange that happened at the party." He said, Maddie, which is my niece at that time, she was 15.
Hmm.
Uh, she went up to my brother and said, "I heard Dad's voice."
Hmm.
And she goes, "I heard Grandpa's voice," and
Hmm.
he told me, um, he told Maddie, "I'm glad y'all are having this party for Grandma. Grandma deserves it," and
Hmm.
that he was happy for her, right? And I said, "Well, that's cool,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah.
That
Maddie
Maddie
heard.
heard
Yeah.
it. So I said, "Well, that's pretty cool." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But when I called Uncle James to cancel the trip to the cemetery, he said, 'Hey, Aunt Patty was hearing my dad's voice too.' And he told my Aunt Patty that he was glad she had the party, that she deserved it, and that he would be there for her when her time comes." Now, my
Oh,
aunt and my niece, neither one of them talked about this.
come to it. No,
So,
that's so
what
cool.
do you think happened there?
Yeah.
Because maybe Maddie has some gifts, but my Aunt Patty has
Oh,
never, you know,
they both have abilities. It runs in the bloodline and it runs in the family. Whether they work on them or not to attune them to harbor them in is completely different and up to them. This is where I love where spirit comes in and some of the unseen and the paranormal that people don't often listen to me talk about. Most of the time they're listening to me prophesize or give messages or deliverances and healings. So from this aspect, when we talk about spirit is in that presence of everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. They're simultaneous, right? So sometimes we understand and have the ability, like, let's say that one person's in one room and one person's in another room, but they'll hear the same exact thing. And spirit has the ability to manifest their energy to be so incredibly heightened that you'll hear that. It's like if somebody comes, there's many times where I have heard somebody say hello. I have heard somebody say my name, and both people hear it simultaneously in two different spaces at once. So, being that your father, he A, was making sure that his message got through, and B, was making sure that everyone knew that he was around and saw everything. So we'll wait for Joe to come back in, and maybe he'll come back in, maybe he won't. But at that point in time, that's especially what it is in my knowing and awareness with a lot of spiritual experience. When spirit moves, they move, and you can hear them simultaneously in one space. All space is at one time. So if they're really wanting to make sure that you hear them and you hear them clear and their message gets through, they will use as many as they need to use simultaneously too at one time. Even if they're in different spaces, that vibration, if one's in one point of the room and one's in another party of the house, two people can hear the same thing at the same time simultaneously from the other side. So, with that being said, that is the understanding when it comes to spirit. I mean, they move. They don't have to move as quick as we think they have to move because it's all happening simultaneously, right? So we have to remember that coming into energies and understandings of the spirit realm, they know no boundaries, right? There's really no boundaries. They are back to their energetic body, right? So they can be two places at once. Number one, I've seen it. Number two, I've felt it in my own life and my own experiences, where exactly what Joe was describing. Um, and I didn't get to tell him this either, but long story short, when he was talking about the being in his room, when he first meditated and he saw that big old being in his room, I didn't get to speak to him about it, and I will have to. But Tartarian, Tartarian is what came up for Joe. So being an interdimensional, like interdimensional, when spirit uses the word interdimensional, it's because they're here on the same plane, just in another dimensional realm. Inter means intertwined into our realm. So the interdimensional being, like if we think about it, Tartarian, outside, Tartarian was thought of to be outside of the glacier wall, a very old Atlantean, type of thing, Tartarian. And it is very interdimensional. We have extraterrestrial, which is outside of this plane and outside of this galaxy, right? The Milky Way, right? That is extraterrestrial, outside of this terrain. But we have interdimensional plane too. And so in the interdimensional existence here, Joe was connecting to a Tartarian being at that point in time. And so when Joe was talking about this simultaneous experience, it's a lot of what you're all experiencing now. You're losing time for wine. It's because things are moving very rapidly, quickly through the dimensional realms right now and the frequencies. And I'm sure a lot of you have felt it over the last couple days, talking about the paranormal and the seen and the unseen and the energies and the in between here. I'm sure you guys have felt it and had a lot of your own similar experiences where there's been a heightening in visions. Maybe you have felt tired, drained. There's been in independent like things going on inside of your body, right? You can feel different sensations, feeling different things that maybe you normally don't feel. There's a lot of things that are going on in the solar plexus and the sacral. So feminine, if you're in the solar plexus and the sacral and the heart, it's going back to the collective reawakening in the heart, even more. And so Joe, I wanted to get his perspective and I didn't get to, which we will at some point in time again. But I wanted to get his perspective on prophets and how he sees those things. But being able to speak to Joe in this way and in this dimension has been huge because Joe brings so many different experiences to the table with people that he's spoken about and talked about. It always has fascinated me with interdimensional beings, skinwalkers. It's a part of my heritage. It's not something that I am afraid to speak of or say. I know that in my native reservations and language, they won't speak of those things. But I truly believe that we're here to understand and bridge the gap of all realms. So I think that there's a lot of things that we're having to kind of come out of our comfort zone about and talk about and acknowledge and stuff like that. So I wanted to give a little bit of not only a dimension to something else. I'll get that video from Joe and see what I can describe about it, and I'll have him back on. I know that he was having technical difficulties earlier, and so he told me that something may happen. So with that being said, if you don't follow Joe, please do. He's all over Spotify and Facebook and Instagram, and there's a lot of shows on there. So for you guys that are, looking to hear other people's stories and other people's experiences and their thoughts and planting seeds and stuff like that, Joe is a good guy to follow in that realm because he talks to all people of all different backgrounds. I mean, he talks to people who, practice different backgrounds of not just spirituality. I think spirituality is a way of life. I don't think it has anything else to do with a way of life, right? When we're talking about different denominations, different religion, different background, I know that Joe talks to a lot of different people from a lot of different denominational backgrounds and cultural aspects, such as Wiccan and witchcraft and witches and all types of different stuff in which they claim or label themselves to be. But I believe beyond that, there is the basis, and that's the foundation that sets the beautiful souls up to live into a demographic of a spiritual lifestyle and what that is for them and what their connection is like. And as we dive deeper into the universal realms of things, the most important is not what foundation you come from or what you, in a sense, personally believe about this or that outside of you. It's truly about what you believe and what you perceive that is intact inside of you. Spirituality is a way of life, and it's not once or twice, and it's not this thing or that thing. It's very intertwined with many different types of higher minds and many different things across the seams. And so I wanted Joe to give that experience. We don't talk enough about those things that he has knowledge and background and awareness in when it comes to Bigfoot and interdimensional beings. And I've only gotten to hear a couple of his stories, especially with the outer body. And I totally understand the outer body. The very first time I had an outer body, it scared the living shit out of me, and I was being attacked. And so I wanted to get his take a little bit more on the paralysis part of that. And speaking about that stuff. So we'll have Joe back on here. But it was very clear that there's a lot more than what we like to get ourselves sucked into. And a part of this show and a part of what we're growing here on the dynamic is to bring these other things to the table. Whether you believe in it or not, that's each to their own experience. But the point is that to get the information out there, people do have um, very much connections and proof and reflections of these things. You know, there is nothing that I don't believe that does or does not happen in God's world. Everything in God's world has been intertwined. It's just about if people have had the perception of an open mind. And when people start to perceive these things within themselves and outside of themselves, it starts to cultivate a different type of belief. And obviously, then, if you have enough beautiful light beings believing in the source of what they're seeing, then the belief is going to become real in that reality. So we really can't tell one person or another what they connect to or what they see, can we, in that reality? Because truly, once we have a perception of it and we shed light on it, then that means somewhere in some dimensional reality it truly exists because someone has had an encounter or an experience with it in their realm. So who are we to tell people what they see or what they believe? Because obviously their perception has shed light onto something which has allowed them to believe in something and perceive in something outside of themselves in order to receive what it was that they needed to see at that moment in time. So obviously there's no mistakes in God's world. I love you all. Thank you for being here with me this evening, even just for a little bit. Go follow Joe. We'll get him back on here. And don't forget to come and enjoy the next show. And next show next week will be Wednesday. And we will be talking to Randy. Okay. And Randy has a lot of beautiful books that are out. Randy has many spiritual experiences of her own, connecting to the source of what she connects to in the creative mind in which she reflects to bring upon the artistry in which she channels. Many people don't understand that a lot of these things that these artists, these writers that they channel, it's actually coming from other places and spaces. So it's going to be really cool to pick Randy's brain next week. So we'll have her on. And then you guys are not going to want to miss the seminar on September 6th. If you guys would like more information about that, you can hit the link in the bio and come visit the website, womboftheancientsun.org, and there are the general admission tickets up for that seminar on the 6th. All right, we are going to be talking a little bit about my experiences, the armed and anointed class that I teach. We're going to get you guys armored up. We're going to teach you how this stuff works, and we're going to teach you how to protect yourselves. We're going to do some breakthroughs, some some shake throughs and some activations too. So if you guys need help in that sacral womb, or if you guys have generational things that you're trying to let go of, if you guys are harboring a lot of uh, attachments and can't seem to get away from those things, or the way that the mind plays and the psychic attack plays, come hang out with me and my team for a little bit as we anoint and release and shake through and break through those things together. You won't want to miss that on September 6th. It's going to be huge. So take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you guys for joining me and Joe tonight. All right, I love you all till we meet again. Mwah.